changes due to growth. So what I thought we would do today is to have more or less a roundtable discussion to discuss some of the issues related to what the county is seeing related to over populated schools and some things that Dr. Cash has, and then we will make some assignments related to items that we would like to have to discuss at our next meeting. So I'm going to start with Dr. Cash, and then we will start, after Dr. Cash speaks, we'll start to my right with Commissioner Blake and just go along the podium and let everyone share what their thoughts and plans are or ideas related to this committee. I would ask that when you speak that you make sure your microphone is on because our meeting is being broadcast on the commission Facebook page and the county's Facebook page. Dr. Cash?
Thank you so very much. I did want to say that this is in preparation for the future and looking at where the population is growing the most. We in Bradley County are seeing a lot of developments go up, and for every development, I think it's like 1.2 child per household. So we know we're growing. Evidence of growth this year alone. We have a projection of 200 more students than we previously had last year, and so we know it's coming. And our hot spots seem to be in the Hopewell Prospect area right now, but I'm also seeing growth in the Waterville area and in the north area. So I think that begs us to look at what is planned for population growth, and then where are those places hitting so that we can plan for the future instead of waiting until it's on top of us and we are having to do things we wouldn't want to do. You don't want kids in portables if you can prevent it. Of course, we always look at, is there a way to rezone that can take care of some of those populations? That's always our first option, is to see, do we have low here and high here where we can rezone? But what I'm seeing right now is a trend in increasing students at every school. So I would hope that we could look at, and on me, you know, which we're doing now, looking at our schools, how many students do we have currently, how many classrooms are still available, how many students would be available in some of the classrooms. For instance, with the state projections, which are 1 to 20 in that K3, and then in 4th and 5th it's 26, and then 30 in the classrooms above that in that secondary realm. It's not only do you have classrooms available, but do you have space in the current classrooms, and that's where I think our job would be.
Thank you, Dr. Cash. Does anyone have any questions for Dr. Cash at this time?
I just have one. The 1.2 per household. I've heard other numbers around 1.6 or 1.8. Do you think that there's a chance that it could be higher than that, or is...
I think that it could be higher because it keeps changing. But remember, in the school system, if you're 1.2 above what the state average is, that kicks you into a different category. So, if it's 1.2, it's really 2 when I look at it.
Okay.
But I think it could go higher.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Blake?
Oh, thank you. Excuse me. Madam Chair, I just start off by saying this is one of the few times, we've probably done it before, I can't remember, where we're trying to be proactive instead of reactive. And I think it'll pay dividends with that approach. Growth is inevitable. There's nothing, I mean, we've seen it all before. There's anti-growth. There's people who would like for Bradley County to stay just the way it is right now, or they probably, don't want another person to move in here. That's not going to happen. So we got a plan. Some of the questions I guess we, over the course of time, need to answer or at least address is it beneficial to expand existing schools to meet the need, or do we need a new school? If we need a new school, what level? Elementary, middle, high school? Because once you build a new school, as you well know, you fund the building of the school, but then you also have it recurring. You gotta hire the teachers that are gonna be there, recurring costs. So it's not just building of the school, it's also the cost ongoing from that time on. And then, of course, and then the zoning, I guess, is gonna be a question. We have two school systems in Bradley County, and I think the people enjoy their kids being able to go where they think that their kid best needs are met, whether it's being the city school system or the county, and what the policies are going to be on that. So these are all questions I think that we'll be able to put on the table and address over the course of this committee's, and addressing the scope of this committee. But I appreciate this committee and what it's going to be able to do.
Thank you, Mr. Blake. Any questions for Commissioner Blake? Ms. Casson?
Sorry, been on the county school board approximately 6 years, maybe starting my 7th. And I think the stark realization that hit me that we needed to do something, although there were rumors about it back in the backgrounds, but was when the 975 homes were projected for exit 20. I immediately picked up the phone and called Dr. Cash because I said, that's in my district, and my schools are full. And so then I've talked to several other board meetings, their schools are full. So I'm like Mr. Blake, I think this is great that we're going to be proactive on this because it's happening immediately. Now, one of the questions that somebody asked me, and I don't know whether we want to address this now or not, but I'm just going to throw it out. Lunchtime, which I thought was very interesting. Some lunch periods start at 10:45 and go till 1:30, something like that. And so I sat back and I looked and I said, well, our cafeterias were built in 1976, 1982, they were built for much smaller populations. So that is one thing that we probably need to look at. Parents were a little bit upset because their kids weren't eating till 1 o'clock. But, these are inside issues of the major issue that we're doing here with the building of schools. So this is something we need to look at. I do know that my schools are growing, my two schools, which are Hopewell and Prospect, are growing by leaps and bounds. And all of the new housing that's gone in out on Free Will Road and Murraytown Road, those are all city, but those students are close enough, and we have open enrollment in the county. So those schools are close enough for the students to come to Prospect, which is an interesting concept. So I am so glad that we're going to be proactive on this because I know that we probably need to be looking at a new junior high. Where do you want to go with that? The new elementary schools, where do you go with that? And since Bradley County has open enrollment, just because a student is in a certain location, like they would have been at exit 20, where the two closest schools were Stewart and Blythe Bower, maybe Prospect was closer. So I'm just really glad that we're looking at this and getting a head start on this.
So are there any questions for Ms. Casson right now? And I don't know, Dr. Cash, if you want to address the cafeteria piece of it.
So when you're looking at capacity, one of the things you look at, you have classroom capacity and then you have core capacity. So we have to also look at the core capacity, which would be the size of your gymnasium, the size of your hallways, and also the size of your cafeterias, your large spaces. So when we analyze where we are, that's one of the things that we have to do is look at that core capacity, because you look at, there are two different core and then actual classrooms, and we'll look at that as well.
Thank you, Dr. Cash.
You're welcome.
Mr. Taylor?
I'd just like to begin by saying that I'm excited to be a part of this committee. I guess reiterate what some of the others have already said, is to be proactive. Again, we know that growth is inevitable, but just looking at whether we're going to build new schools or expand on the existing, and how to be financially responsible as we're looking at these things. Again, just excited to be a part of that. I appreciate the comments that others have already shared with us. Some of the other concerns, such as the cafeteria. Dr. Casson had mentioned the gymnasiums. I know in my district that there's some crowding issues in those areas. So just, again, being proactive and looking at these things, because we know that growth is inevitable, and being able to be a part of this committee as we plan for that, I think it's going to be a good thing. I look forward to working with each of you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Any questions for Mr. Taylor? Mr. Thomas?
Yeah, I'm glad to be on this committee as well. We've really, in the last 2 years, seen a whole lot of houses being built all over the county. I couldn't really pinpoint any one place, and most of the major developments that you're seeing are inside the city limits because of the sewer policy with Cleveland Utilities. But I'm happy to be here and happy to answer any questions you guys have.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Any questions for Mr. Thomas?
Not for Mr. Thomas, but just overall pointing out that with growth in any area comes economic development. So even though we're having growing pains, the county itself will see that economic impact as well, with more families, more buying power, industry coming in. All of those things come with families coming in. The whole county will grow. So I don't want people to think, well, the school system is making all of this happen or occur. It's the growth comes naturally economically when you bring more people in, more people available for jobs, which we need, more taxes coming into our school system as well as into the county. So there are a lot of great things, and I just want to say personally how thankful I am that y'all are willing to look at it before it's on top of us and we are stressed about it. So I appreciate all of y'all willing to work, because it's going to be work. It's not a small task. It's a pretty big task to determine where that growth is and then what the impact is all the way around. Thank you.
Thank you. Real quick, Dr. Cash, you've come to Bradley County being the superintendent of another. You've been through a process where you had to recommend a new school?
Yes, sir. Actually, in Sumner County, I actually opened a new school as the principal, and it was because of growth. And then in Robertson County, we had to build a new school right before I left. So in both sections, but Robertson County did not have the exponential growth that Bradley County is seeing right now. Sumner County does. It's about studying where it should go, how many students you predict to be out there, and just planning forward. You do download students from other schools to relieve that capacity when you build another school. So you wouldn't, you have to weigh out what is the best action economically as well as location, but also knowing part of it is if we have schools that are so overcrowded we can't hold anymore, you're building for that region or that area to be rezoned. So if you build another school, you're pulling from other schools to feed that school to relieve the crowding.
And that's kind of one thing. The reason for the question is obviously the experience that you gain when you had to go through that process, what they did right, what they did wrong, and all that kind of stuff. But you don't get to build a school every other year. So the school, if we were to build one, either elementary or middle or high school, you would build it for many years, 10 at the minimum. But probably would like to be satisfied for 15 and 20 years. So that means you got to anticipate not only the growth that's going on in the circle of years that you're here, but also the years that are going to come in the future at that time of that scope of time.
And I think that's important that we have both Bentley and Mr. FIvas on this committee to see where is that projection. You have to not only know what's going in now, but where's that projection of new subdivisions and all of those things, which Bentley has the knowledge of that. I don't have that knowledge. I hear it after, or like Nancy did, hey, and I'm like, oh, a little stroke in here. I think this committee is going to do some really good things. And you are right. Like when we built Lake Forest, we didn't build it for today. We built it for future, so when that future growth hit, we could hold those kids.
Dr. Cash, are you seeing the largest growth in elementary, middle school, or high school currently?
My largest growth is coming in in elementary schools and high school. I've got a slower growth in the middle schools, but they are growing. When I look at my high schools and my elementary schools, that's where most of my growth is coming. My elementary schools are being impacted harder right now than my high schools. because the high schools can move, which is not ideal, but you can have multiple teachers using a classroom. That's not the ideal thing, but we can have some flexibility where in an elementary school you don't have that flexibility. So for instance, in a high school, a science teacher may be in a classroom for 2 blocks, and then I have a different teacher come in during that teacher's planning to teach a group of kids. Again, it's not ideal, but we do have some flexibility, and in the elementaries we don't. But growth is coming pretty strong in both of those areas.
Any particular grades in the elementary? I mean, is it kindergarten? Is it mixed or?
It is mixed, but your heaviest growth is in that K3 area. That's where you're seeing the heaviest growth. Although meeting with one of my principals yesterday, it's impacting my higher grades in a couple of areas. The growth is so fast, I can't really do a strong prediction, but my K3 is where I'm having to pick up teachers now. So I've picked up 4 teachers since the beginning of school because of growth. And only one has not been in that K3 arena.
Does anyone else have questions for Dr. Cash? Thank you, Commissioner Cry, for joining us. Commissioner Cry currently serves as the chair of the Education Committee. I don't know if you would like to add anything, Commissioner Cry, to the discussion. We're just having a roundtable discussion about what we see or hope to see come from the fruits of this committee.
Thank you. I think Dr. Cash she and I have spoken at length, and I feel that she's right on top of it, and I'm comfortable with what she said because I was somewhat familiar with what she was going to say. I'd just like to point out to everyone it's much cheaper on the taxpayer to expand an existing school than it is to build a new one. It worked out great on Michigan Avenue and North Lee, and really, I think we have a situation that's coming up pretty quickly. Prospect, Hopewell, and Michigan Avenue, the population density is there. I was supposed to have had a shot in my hip, but my sugar level was too high, so they didn't give it to me. That's why I was able to make it. But thank you for given me the opportunity.
Commissioner Blake?
Thank you real quick. Dr. Cash, to that end on, on expansion, Ms. Casson mentioned cafeteria is big, you gotta get them in, get them fed, and get them back in the class. You only have a range of time that you can do that. You don't want to start lunch at 3 o'clock. Have you identified what schools can be expanded? I mean, you know what schools you have. You have a certain amount of elementaries, 2 middle schools, 2 high schools.
Only partially. Your biggest ones that were built for expansion are going to be Parkview, because you have land. You could most likely look at Waterville to expand. That's at your elementary level. You have, again, you go back to that core capacity, so we'd have to analyze the core capacity for both Hopewell, Prospect, and Michigan Avenue. And I think you might have the core capacity at Michigan Avenue. I do not think you have it at Hopewell. So you'd have to expand both the gymnasium as well as the cafeteria. But that has to be a pretty in-depth analysis with an architect and a fire marshal. Fire marshal plays a huge role. They're the ones who say, this is it. You're at your capacity, but it's based on those drawings.
The 2 expansions that we did, the North Lee and Black Fox, that's as far as they could go.
That's as far as they can go.
They're tapped out.
They're tapped out.
So we do know if expansion is the right decision, which schools could handle some expansion.
Yes.
Right.
So for our next meeting, Dr. Cash, could you provide that for us? And I don't expect you to go meet with the fire marshal. I mean, you know enough about it, but which schools could potentially be expanded and which ones cannot be expanded based on land, like North Lee or whatever?
Depends on when your meeting is. We can definitely work on it. One of the things I can do actually, we're already working on it, is the number of classrooms that we have, the number of possible current expansions we could have. I would really have to get an architect involved with measuring the capacity of the gyms and the cafeterias, and how much land we have available. But if you give me enough time, I can get it. If you're giving me weeks, I don't think I can get it done. So
Well, I don't think, I think we have plenty of time. I don't think we have I don't think this is just a 3-month committee. So I think we have
if you want
plenty.
it next month, I would have to tell you no.
Yeah, I think we have plenty. Yeah, maybe by the end of the year. I mean, I don't see us meeting monthly or anything like that right now. I think the first part of this meeting, the first few months is going to be a lot of theory and data gathering.
Right.
Is is what I believe.
I will be glad to take it back to my board, because we may have to pay a fee to have it analyzed, but it would be well worth it. But that would be a board decision. I don't think, I mean, both Ms. Casson and Mr. Taylor are there. I think they could carry that to the board as a request, and we could get that done.
Okay. Another bit of information that I would like to see as a part of this committee is school enrollment at each of your schools. And I would like to see that broken down by students that are enrolled in a particular school that are in zone, students that attend a particular school that are out of zone, but they're county students, and then city students who are attending county schools. So each school would have 3 different levels of their population, if that makes sense. And I don't know if there's others that have requests of information that they would like to see on this committee. Mr. Taylor?
Just 2 things real quick. One of which you had mentioned that Parkview, in the 4th district had room for expansion, but I believe that Taylor as well. I think Mr. Stepp had donated some land out there. So just a note on that. And then also you had made mention of portables, which we all know that we don't want to do that, but currently, are we using portables, and kind of to what extent, or which campuses are using those? Would that be something we could look at?
Yes, we do not have a lot of students in portables because they are not the safest that you can have, but we will analyze that. We moved away from that a long time ago. Actually, prior to me, that was one of the goals, is to get rid of the portables. And when Mr. Blake mentions expansion in other school districts, that was one of the reasons that we did build a school in Robertson County, is to get rid of the portables, because we had too many kids in portables, and they're just not as safe as they should be. Yes, we did.
And do you have portables at Waterville now for pre-K?
Pre-K is in portables. Pre-K does not. They operate under, even though their money runs through us, they operate on a different budget than we have. And I believe some of those portables were shifted when Blue Springs, when I think they were shifted and given to them. We tried to help maintain them, but we do have some preschoolers at Black Fox and at Waterville, North Lee, and Hopewell have pre-K in portables.
And if I could go back to my request about the enrollment by zone, if we could also have that by grade, if that's not too much trouble, since I would appreciate that. And then I guess, Bentley, what we need probably from you is what do the population trends look like? I know Ms. Casson had alluded to the fact that the chamber had done a population study that went out to year 2035. So we can, Lori, if we could ask Mike Griffin if they have that, or if they would be willing to share that with us. And then I know Mr. FIvas will have some information related to growth related to the city, and where potentially, I mean, we know where part of it is, and I don't know how hard that's going to be for you to look at that and try to determine where the growth. We can look at historically where it has been, and I think that's a good idea of probably where it's going to continue. And I agree with you, most of it's probably going to be in the city just because of the services that the city provides. So.
Had a ton of houses built in the last 2 years, though. more so, I've been here 10 years and I haven't seen anything like this.
I know.
But it's really not in just one spot. I mean, it's all over the county. Maybe I can analyze it with a map and show where the homes have been built in the last 2 years, and we can look at it that way. I can get with GIS.
Okay, that'd be good. That'd be great. Okay. Does anyone else have any questions? I mean, does the mayor's office have any questions? Tommy Ledford has joined us, Commissioner-elect Ledford. I don't know, Josh, if you or Mr. Ledford have any questions that you would like to ask regarding the population trends? If you'll go to the microphone, please, so the thousands of people watching can hear.
Yeah, all 12. So I was just going to say thank you for asking for the grade level, because as we all said, the schools probably won't be built in the next 2, 3, 4. We're looking at a plan and a growth plan for 10 years, 15 years down the road. And so being able to see what the difference is in the growth and the expansion in high school, most of those students will be off into college by the time a school gets built. I mean, it takes a year, 2 years, 3 years to build a really good, decent-sized school. So to see those growth levels from kindergarten through 3rd grade where you're having your most issues, to be able to plan for that middle school or that high school or whatever type of elementary school, whatever school it is great. So that, I think just having that as much information broken down to the micro level of by location and then also by grade level, I think it would be more beneficial to be able to see that statistical analysis of going forward. So that's the only thing I was going to say. So thanks for asking.
I would just like to know accurate count on portables, how many are used with students?
I can tell you where my pre-K is. We only had one portable in use, and that was at Walker Valley High School. But I do not have as far as the use, and that's what we're looking at now.
But you have a portable at Waterville, but not in use with students. So,
Yes, sir. It has
Okay.
pre-K in it.
so no students in any portables at all.
We would have to check that to verify.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
One quick one, Dr. Cash, that's more a statement question. The state of Tennessee feels like it's the county's responsibilities for brick and mortar
Yes.
for the most part, but from my understanding, the formula that they're working on in the General Assembly, and they'll come to session this January, they're going to take up what they started, I guess, in the past, as the new formula with the number of students. I guess that the clarification is that they expect the counties, if you were to say we need a new school, the General Assembly is not going to come in and say, here's the money or anything like that. They're going to say, county commission, fund your new bricks and mortars, but the state will then pick up the new student counts and stuff like that.
I'm
But
not
they
100%.
lag a year or two.
Right. I'm not 100% sure how that's going to roll out. They're still looking at those rules and regs, but they have something in there for fast-growing districts. I'm not sure if we qualify for a fast-growing district, but it would be to utilize for hiring new teachers and the needs in the school system. I don't think they're changing the formula as far as brick and mortar.
Okay.
Correct. Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, realistically, Dr. Cash, when would be realistically, is it December before we meet again? Is it that far? Is that too far? Is it January?
I believe if you, and I'll kind of defer to Mr. Taylor and Ms. Casson, if you are looking at, I mean, they're minus the Pie Center, you've got 17 schools to analyze and look at for number of classrooms and pieces like that. I can get very quickly. The documents that we pulled for the load, the capacity load, were so old that it's time to renew those and do those. So some of it would depend on how fast the board could actually, approve a study. So I'm thinking January may be a better time rather than December.
Okay, so maybe you and I will touch base toward the end of this year, and if we think it's doable in January, we'll set something, and
Yeah.
if not, we'll have Lori send something out to this committee, and then we will meet as soon after the first of the year, January, February. That makes sense. I mean, we don't want to put a tremendous load on you all, but a lot of the information does have to come from you and from Bentley.
And the other thing, just for this, particular committee to consider, is that when you are looking at out-of-zone students and everything, as my attorney tells me, there's a reason we have open zoning, and that's because those families pay county taxes.
Correct.
So it's interesting. Right now, I would probably say we've got students that are from the county schools that are in the city schools. So I could work with Dr. Dyer and see maybe what he had as far as that
Okay.
crossing over.
Perfect. Okay. Any other questions? So we'll just look to reconvene sometime after the first of the year, and we'll set that meeting sometime in December and work with everyone's schedule. Okay? All right. Meeting adjourned. Thank you for being here